Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to be reading an apple book and then doing an apple worm paper. So in your Friday bundle, you're going to grab this out, okay? And this is the paper I want you to find. Okay, I'm going to read you a story called The Biggest Apple Ever. And while I'm reading that story, I would love for you to start some coloring on this paper. So what I did was I used a black marker. I wrote my name right there. You could write your name. And then I used a combination of markers and crayons together. The markers are so bright, but then if you put the crayons on over it, it looks so good. So let me show you that one more time so you can see. So use markers and crayons while I read you a fantastic story. The biggest apple ever. The biggest apple ever. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same apple pie. But you had to be there to see how it happened. On opening day at Mouseville School, the principal, Mr. Mouser, made an announcement. We will be learning about apples this fall, and to get things started, we will have a contest. Whoever brings in the biggest apple to his teacher will win a special prize. The judging will take place on Friday. Good luck, everyone. I have an apple tree in my backyard, said Penelope. I bet it has really big apples. I know, Penelope. There's an apple tree across from my house, said James. I'm going to climb it as soon as I get home. I don't have any apple trees, said Clayton, the house mouse, but I'm going to find Miss Mousley, the biggest apple ever. No, you're not, said his friend Desmond, the field mouse. I am. Oh, yeah, said Clayton. Yeah, said Desmond. Uh-oh, so now they're having a contest, and I hope they're having a friendly contest. All the way home on the school bus, Clayton and Desmond talked about the contest. Maybe I could grow an apple tree with really big apples, said Clayton. I don't know if he has time for that. It takes too long, said Desmond. I heard Mrs. Mousley say it takes 6 years. I'll think of something, said Clayton. So will I, said Desmond. When Clayton got off the bus, he sneaked back into town to see what Penelope and James were up to. Penelope had come down from her tree. She was carrying 2 tiny apples. James was still up in the tree across the street. He was picking very small apples too. Clayton knew he'd seen bigger ones at the market. When Desmond came by a little later, he realized the same thing. The ones on the tree were quite small. I've seen big ones at Whole Foods and Key Market. The next day at school, Penelope and James brought in their tiny apples, but no one else had brought in anything. Mrs. Mousley cleared her throat. Class, we have a lot of work to start the year, but because we are learning about apples and having an apple contest, we will go to Barnaby's apple orchard this afternoon. Everyone got very excited. It's going to be a field trip. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Clayton. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Desmond. At the orchard, Mrs. Mousley pointed out the different kinds of apples, and then everyone disappeared into the trees looking for a winner. Clayton walked down one row, craning his neck. Desmond walked down another row, craning his neck. Then Clayton saw what he thought was a really big apple. It was a little too high to reach, but he stretched for it. At that moment, Desmond saw the very same apple on the very same branch, and he stretched for it too. And they bumped heads and fell down. Do you see them? There they are. I think we should bring in this apple together, said Clayton. Well, no one said we couldn't, said Desmond. It's a good idea. But when they got back to the bus, James had an apple that was even bigger. The apple was so big, he could barely even carry it. Clayton and Desmond looked at each other. What will they do now? I see it. It's right there. That night at dinner, Clayton explained the problem to his dad. Said Dad. Apples don't come in too many sizes. Do you think that you'll be able to find a bigger one? I don't know, said Clayton. Then maybe James will win the prize this time. It's okay if he does. Over at Desmond's house, Uncle Vernon said exactly the same thing. But Clayton and Desmond were still determined. They wanted to win. The next afternoon, they met at Barnaby's orchard. They picked 2 huge baskets of apples, but nothing they found was bigger than the apple that James had found. You know, Clayton said, I think Dad was right. This time James gets to win. But we've got all these apples. Why don't we bake a big apple pie? Desmond laughed. Great! Let's bake the biggest apple pie ever, and we'll make it for the entire class. Clayton nodded. And I think I know where we'll find a pie pan that's big enough. The following afternoon, Desmond arrived at Clayton's house with Uncle Vernon. Everything's packed up and ready, Clayton said, and it's all in the truck. But where are we going? Desmond asked. You'll find out in a minute, said Clayton. Dad drove with Clayton and Desmond beside him in the front seat. Uncle Vernon stayed in back with the apples and the other ingredients for a giant pie. As they came around the corner, Desmond gasped. Oh, Tony's Pizza Parlor! Of course, said Clayton. What could be better than a giant pizza pan? Mr. Tony greeted them at the door. Welcome, welcome. We're ready to begin. And so they got to work, making the dough for the crust, kneading it and rolling it out into a big circle, and then spreading it over the pan. And then everyone peeled and sliced apples and mixed together the sugar and spices and spread the rest of the dough on top. Wow, said Clayton and Desmond when they were finished. Wow, wow, wow. An hour, said Mr. Tony. Just give me an hour. The giant pan fit just right into his large, huge oven. Okay, I'm so hungry now. The next day was Friday. Who would have the largest apple? James, of course. And Mr. Mouser handed him the prize. A cheddar cheese apple. Mrs. Mousley looked surprised. Clayton? Desmond? Nothing from you? The two of them grinned. It's a really big smile. And at the same moment, the classroom door opened and in came Clayton's dad, Uncle Vernon, and Mr. Tony, struggling to carry the giant apple pie by themselves. How wonderful, said Mrs. Mousley. That's the biggest apple pie ever. We made it for the whole class, said Clayton. All of us together, said Desmond. They shared a high five, and everyone in the class had a very big slice. The end. That story. So I hope you got some coloring done. I'm going to show you what to do. Now you're going to take your scissors. You're going to cut the apple. You're going to cut the worm out. And then I'll show you what to do with that. Once you get it cut out, let's see. Whew. Make sure you have a worm. That's my Mrs. Chappelle worm. And then you're going to cut the apple. Oh, I've been cutting so many years in a row that I am quite good and fast. So here's my apple. And now I'm going to glue my worm anywhere I want. Now, if you have another sheet of paper, like a piece of red construction paper or yellow or any color, or even white, you can glue all of it on the top. Have a great time.